Cool. So let's get started. So one of the things that we noticed over the weekend was that some of you might be a little bit more new working with like Git and Teams, or so we kind of want to talk about Git Flow. I want to introduce Git Flow. So how many of here has used Git Flow before? No, yes, kind of. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh, so everyone, most everyone has used Git Flow. So, Boo, tell me what Git Flow is.
I think it's a short control person that can give you the right to store your coding, your data, everything, and it's a great tool for you to work as a team, because if you won't miss any code, then you.
Yeah, so with Git and branches, a lot of times if you guys are working on the same branch, you guys could potentially change something that and have a conflict, right? And then you're always trying to resolve these conflicts as you guys are making commits. So Git Flow allows for an interesting way of organizing your branches. The two main branches are master and develop, and from there, from develop, you can create feature branches. From master branch, you can create hot fixes and release branches. But it's just a great way for, if each one of you are working on different features, you guys can create your own feature branch and then commit that back into the develop branch, or merge that back into the develop branch, and then once your develop branch is ready for production, you basically push that back to the master. So there's actually a command line tool that you guys can install. So I would recommend going and using that. But basically, it allows you to quickly create branches by just simply typing git flow branch or git flow release, so on and so forth. Okay? So I know there were some merge conflicts recently, so hopefully that will help you guys resolve things going forward. Okay, cool. So today we are going to be talking about UI look and feel. So most of you guys have played around with some form of styling, and coming up with, at least in the homeworks, doing like some really awesome designs. But we will kind of want to formalize that a little bit more. So how many of you here have heard about material design? No, yes, kind of, or know what it is. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so everyone knows what material design is. Do you want to talk more about material design and what it is?
Material design is more for Android version like fine.
Okay, and what does it describe? Material. Anyone else want to give a shot? Daniel?
I think it's design skill developed by people, and it's like it doesn't use a lot of details, but only just empty colors and.
Yeah, it tries to use, like, for example, colors, depth, to communicate function, right? And in fact, Google tries to enforce this with a lot of the apps that are being released. So one of the biggest reasons to use material design is actually to get Google featured, on the Play Store. In fact, in order to get featured on the Play Store, Google will actually send requests to apps to have them conform to material design. But in general, material design is used in a lot of different apps. Does anyone have an example of an app that it's used in? Which one?
Gmail.
Gmail? Gmail?
Inbox by Gmail.
Inbox by Gmail? Okay. Cool. Yes, definitely. It's definitely Google stuff. Has anyone seen Airbnb? Airbnb's app? Let's see. Yeah, so one of the things that you want to like basically look at is like, so what makes, for example, these three screens like a good design, right? Any comments? Like what makes these three like better than like a normal flat, like just regular design? Actually, I think these are just kind of okay, but
The color really match together.
colors, okay.
They use the image by hero image on
Yeah.
screen.
Also spacing, right? Spacing is really important here, right? Also icons and stuff like that. So how many of you have used material design in your app? Anyone? Yes? Okay. Cool. So one of the things that we want to show you is, see if I can find it. But there's actually a color picker that, one of the most important things about material design is colors, right? So they actually have a tool, I think somewhere that, let's see, check out this palette, I think. Yeah, so material palette allows you to like basically pick two colors and it'll come up with the scheme for you. So instead of having to like basically figure it out on your own, one of the things that we recommend is using this website or any other of these utility websites. For example, let's say I want deep orange and lime as my two colors. You'll basically get a color palette, and then you can start leveraging this palette, right? Cool. All right, so today we're talking about drawables. So let's actually just create a new project and start messing around with stuff, okay? The activity, finish. Let's create this project. Also, just for reference, within the Coder School lectures, or week 6, basically we have a lot of guides that you can go through. So definitely go through it when you guys have a chance. They have a lot of references to utilities and things that you can use for materials design. I won't go over it right now, but it's just something to make sure that you guys know about. Okay, cool. So basically we create an empty project. Let me just run it really quick and get the simulator set up. Okay, sweet. But can someone sort of describe what the process is of going through and skinning and, like skinning your look and feel? Like, how would you go about doing it? So, let's see. Phong?
First of all, I think we must have design concept.
Okay.
And then we have to choose the face, the test, the form, and the color palette.
Right.
The roundable on the icon.
Yep.
And then we have arrange it on the screen with the dimension.
Right.
Backlit dimension.
Gotcha. And so how would you go about approaching that in terms of getting it? Once you have your palette selected, how would you get it onto into your app?
The form I use, I override it, and the variable I have plugin in the Arrow that's the way the material icon to use.
Right.
And it's the way for different type of icon and PPI and it's PPI.
Right. So yeah, I think that really comes down to the crux of what skinning your app looks like. So basically, every component or view. Remember how when we talked about views, there's view and view groups. They take up a specific area on the screen, and so skinning is really about like how that view looks, right? So really, it's just really it's just about styling that space, right? That block of space. But there's a lot of functional things, right? For example, button has a lot of different states, right? And so you want that area to change based off of the different states that view can go through. So what we traditionally think about like skinning is like, okay, for every component or every view, how do you like basically style that block, right? So how many of you guys have, for example, used CSS? CSS, right? It's like the box model, right? You have this box, and how do you actually like color and the border, and it's very similar to here in Android, and that's Android exposes it in different ways, and so that's what we're going to be talking about here. It basically exposes it through drawables. So again, if most things are rectangular in this box model, if we basically create a new resource file, let's say we want to create a gradient, for example. Create gradient. Oops. Let me modify this layout really quick. Let's change this to linear layout. And then let's have a text view, and we'll add a button. Okay. Okay. So what we want to do right now is we want to basically change the background to have a gradient view. So the simplest way to do that is basically to create a shape drawable. So if I create a shape, the shape basically has a lot of different, it starts by default, it's a rectangle, right? And within there you can actually create, you have all these different things, parameters that you can specify, right? So what is solid, for example? What does that mean? Right, right. It basically fills your rectangle with this a solid color. What does stroke mean? Right, a line around the border, right? So in this case, since we're creating a gradient, we can select gradient, and we can see that we have a lot of different parameters that we can also fill in, right? So what are the most obvious, right? So the two are start color and end color. So does anyone want to give me a start color? Green? Gray? Green? So give me a hex value. Triple C? Okay. Oh, gray, right? Okay, gray. Okay, what about an end color? What? FFF? So what is FFF? White, right?
White.
So that didn't change anything. I think by default it's already white. So give me a different color. What? Triple zero? Okay, to black. Okay. So as you can see, this gradient goes from left to right, but you can actually change the angle as well. So I think if we do 90, it goes top to bottom, right? Or yeah, bottom to top. So once we have this gradient defined, what we can do is we can actually go into your layout and change the background. And you can basically assign this to a drawable, right? Great gradient. And let's run this. Cool. So it does exactly what we want, right? It basically changes the background to a gradient from CCC to 0, 0, 0 at an angle of 90 degrees. Does that make sense, guys? Cool. All right. So what if we want to make, what if we want to mess around with like a button design, right? So this button design that we added to the layout is actually pretty ugly. It's just this gray button, it's default, and what is it? It's like black text. I think it has a black border. So let's style this, right? So how do we want to style this? Let's create a new drawable. Let's call it button. Okay. Again, we will use a shape. And so let's create a red button with a gray border. So can someone give me hex values for those? So to specify that, you type solid, color. Give me a red value. FF? No. Something a little bit more complicated than that. FF00. That's like strong. That's like that's like a guaranteed red, right? A different red. So there's another way you can do this, right? I can press on this and like kind of select. We want to do it that way? Okay, we'll do it that way. We can choose. Okay, but then as Phil mentioned, in order to get a border, we have to use stroke, right? So what do we want to specify under stroke? Well, let's start with color. So give me a color. Black?
No, AO.
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 AO. Okay. And so why doesn't that show up? Width. Okay. All right. So we want to specify a width. And so what do we want to specify as width? 2 dp. Okay. Cool. And so we can kind of see it there, right? It's barely visible, but you can see it. And so what do we do to apply this to the button? So similar to how we did it, how we applied the gradient. So does anyone know? Who? Style. It's not style. Why isn't it style? Okay, but well, I mean, under the layout, right? The linear layout. How do we get this to take on? All right, you can set the background. And in this case, what was it? Drawable add button, right? And we can see this change. So let's run this. So what's the problem that we're going to have here, though, by just setting the background to that? What's something you guys that might happen? There's a button, but like people want to interact with this button, right? So nothing happens when you click on it or tap on it. And so one of the key things about design, look and feel is basically to give feedback visually when someone clicks or taps on something or interacts with something, whether that be through animation or through state changes. So luckily Android by default actually already has that sort of built in. So you can actually change the style based off of the states that it goes through. And so what that is called is actually a state list, which is another drawable, right? So let's basically create a new drawable called button state list. So a state list basically says what? It says based off of the specific state that this visual component or this view goes through, we want to fill in that box with something, right? And so the way you specify that is actually through the item tag. So there's a few ways to basically. So let's say we already have this app button.xml created, right, with the specific shape. If we want if we want to use it, we can basically specify the drawable, and we can set that to the app button. But as of right now, there is no state that is assigned to this specific drawable. So what we want to do is what? Activated? Active. So basically there's all these states that we can set. So what is the right state?
Animal.
Enabled.
Expressed.
Why? So why is it not enabled? What does enabled mean? So there's a lot of different states, right, that you can set, but why not enabled? What does enabled mean? It means it's clickable, right? But that's not actually clicked. So the right one is actually pressed, right? And so we basically set that to true. But what we should also do is we have to create another button state list, or sorry, another drawable for when it's unpressed, right? So let's just create app button. Sorry, let me rename this. So it's pressed, and then let's make app button the default. Set this to false. Pressed. Okay, so I will fix this later, but if we run this and we change, so what color do we want the background to be when it's pressed? Give me a color, guys. Random. AAB 732, right? Okay, cool. So it's like a green, a dirty green. Perfect. This is going to be a hideous button, but okay. So what have we forgotten here? So if I run this won't work, right? So we create the state list. Still doesn't work. Right, to use a button state list. So basically we have to change this to use, or the layout to basically use the button state list, right? All right, now it works, right? Okay, but so can someone tell me how this state list is evaluated? How is it evaluated? So how does it, like, so basically, if I were to read this, right, it says basically if state pressed is false, then please show this this shape. If it is true, show this shape. But in fact, the way this selector is actually evaluated is actually as like an if-else statement. So I could actually remove this and put this on the bottom, right? So this will be now the default state. So if basically what it'll say is if the state pressed is true, then please show the app button pressed drawable. If not, show the regular app button. Okay, so what actually the reason why I'm going through this is because if it is a if-else statement, you can actually create compound parameters. So I can basically also say state enabled too, right? So state enabled must be true. Does that make sense, guys? Right, so that works, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense why that works? Okay, so, and the reason because that we might want to do that is because let's say, for example, we had another state where it's just false, then we want it to be completely grayed out, right? So let's basically do that. Let's create a new XML, a new shape for when it is disabled. And what are we going to do? We're going to make it gray, right? So colors,
F5,
F5, F5, F5. Perfect. Oops, that's stroke. F5, 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 right? And we'll also do that same thing for that.
The last one.
Oh, sorry. 5. Awesome. Great job, pair programming. Okay, and then we will basically set this drawable to app button disabled. And then if we run this, it should still work the same. But then what we're going to do is go into the activity and set that button to be disabled, and then we'll see that. Right, that works. And let's change this button to be enable false. Let's run this. Right? Now in disabled mode. So now when we click it, it's always in that state. Yeah, sure.
For example, first I want to manipulate the text color button.
The text color, yeah. So the text color is completely separate, right? So, and we'll talk about that a little later. But let's say I want to say text color. So give me a text color. Oh, so you're also saying for the press state, and yeah, yes. So, so what is a color, right? You have all these colors, right? So you can actually communicate that as well through your various state selectors. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. Okay? Cool. Does that make sense? All right. So, but in this case, when we're working with shapes, it's pretty simple, right? Like, so for shape, like I can add another parameter on top of this. Let's say for pressed, I can basically do something like this, right? Shape. So there's all these different like types, right? I can do oval, and we can see what that looks like. So it should change from a rectangle to oval when I press on it.
Can we add more color? Like I want to make a rainbow color for my button.
Rainbow color.
Yeah.
So how would you do a rainbow color?
I ask you, can we
You-
do that?
Yeah. So you absolutely can, and I'll show you how in a little bit. But what I'm trying to show you is like right now is like the shape is actually is the most basic unit, right? It's basically just a rectangle or an oval or a line, and from there you actually use that to build. You basically build more drawables out of that shape to, for example, to form a rainbow. But okay, let's see what oval looks like. Let me re-enable this button. Right? Okay. But again, the shapes are very simple shapes, right? They're lines, there's ovals, there's rectangles. Rectangles by far is the default. But now that we want to create something a little bit more complex. So there's actually something called a layer list. So how many of you guys have used Photoshop? Photoshop? No, yes, kind of. So how do you guys create like something complex, right? Photoshop has a lot of different layers, and what you do is you kind of stack them, and you have things clip each other, where they cut or block certain things, and then you form these complex shapes out of taking these shapes together. For example, if you want to create like a square with a rounded side, what you do is you put a circle like over to the left, and then you put a box, right? And so what you're doing is you're composing them. And so that's exactly what a layer list does. So let's actually go through the example of creating like a rainbow colored button, okay? Because I'm assuming you're not talking about gradient, right? Because a gradient is, you can also do it. You can put different stop colors in between. Does that make sense?
So can we?
But rainbows, I think what you're saying is discrete colors, right? For each one, right?
I just want to add more colors.
Okay, cool. So let's do that. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use this thing called a layered list. Okay? And again, in the layered list, you can actually specify items. So again, with these items, you can specify a drawable. But in this case, what I'm going to show you is that you can actually specify the shape inside the item. So I can basically say shape. Again, so color. Give me a color.
290AC.
Solid color, but 209.
290.
290.
A3C.
A3C.
A.
Oh, 8. Okay. Alright, cool. Okay. Okay, so give me basically give me the colors of your rainbow that you want.
And CDF.
CDF
2C6.
2C6. Okay? And last one?
FF 6060.
FF
6060.
6060. So these are actually pretty close. Right? Okay, cool. So what's happening here? What's happening here? So we're creating this layer list, but why are we only seeing one color? They're mixed? They're not mixed.
Just
the last one is override.
Right, so how is this drawn, right? So what's happened is you have this layered list that has 3 children, right? 3 items, right? So it's going to draw the first one, which is the first layer, and it's going to draw another one on the top, and then another one on top of that, right? But now what we want to do is expose the underlying layers somehow. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, so does that make sense at all? Basically, you have 3 layers that are drawn on top of each other. So right now what you're seeing is a topmost layer, right? If you actually match this color to what's being drawn in the preview, it's basically the topmost layer. So what we want to do is we want to expose the underlying layers, but we want to draw it in a rainbow format, right? So within each item in a layered list, they have these attributes called left, right, top, so on and so forth, right? What this does is it actually is like, it's basically clipping that area. So let's say I were to take the topmost item, and for the top, I would say, I don't know, give me a size. 10 dp.
Okay. Maybe
10 dp. Let's see what happened here.
this
It's happened, right? So basically, you see the color underneath. No? Sorry, let's make that bigger so everyone can see. You see that? Well, let's make that. Let's make,
Yeah.
so what's going on here? We can also do something like, I don't know. Let's do left. Give me size. 20 dp. Right? So you just imagine like you have this layer and you're like literally just tearing off 20 dp, tearing off 40 dp, right? And then it's exposing the layer that's underneath. Okay? Okay, so now how do give me some sizes to create this rainbow, and like how would I specify the other items? So let's remove this 20 dp.
Maybe the first one is
The second one.
200 dB.
Okay, so this you want to change this to 200 dp?
True.
For 400.
400 dp. Okay.
200 dB. Let's see.
200 dp.
Like you-
Right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so let's try this. This is actually going to look kind of weird, right? You guys know why, but I'll show you. Okay, so let's apply this to the button. Or actually, let's apply this to the background. That might actually come out a little bit better. So let's go to the layout. Button rainbow. Why did it only show purple? Why did it only show purple?
I see there's the first color of the
Yeah, because the height is not more than 200 dp, right? So yeah, if we change it, let's say like we undo this, and then we change this this drawable to button rainbow, right? Then it comes out. So that's important, right? Because if you're specifying like, yeah, like if you're specifying like dimensions through dp, then you're also sort of implying a specific size. So you have to be careful. Okay, so now let's change this so that we want it just to have like a purple border and a green border. So the same colors, but we want to use that as a border, so that we can use it in the button. How do we want to do that? Let's edit this. So we want purple top border, green bottom border. Anyone else want to give this a try? Daniel?
Okay, how was the idea?
So purple top border, green bottom border.
So the first shape
Yep, so the first shape is purple.
uh,
The first rectangle is purple. So let's remove these requirements.
can set the stroke of this shape.
Yeah, so we got to be careful because the stroke, there's a stroke around the entire rectangle, and that's why we have to create these complex layers. Is because if I use a stroke, it's literally drawing a border around the entire rectangle and the entire shape, right? Instead, what we want to do is we want control over each border. separately, and that's why we're creating this layer. So literally, like I have these layers stacked on top of each other, and I want to tear specific portions of the top layer off so that I can expose the bottom layers. Boom. You want to give this a try? How would I do that?
I think we specify the bottom.
Okay, cool. So for which one? This one or this one? Bottom here? Okay.
The bottom.
And what DP? So button's pretty small, so I don't know, something smaller.
2 dp.
2 DP. Okay, so we can definitely see that here, right?
It's
Okay.
error.
Oh,
No, I can't.
right?
Impossible.
It's there, right? It's green. You can kind of see. Shoot, it doesn't show up very well. Does it zoom? Shoot. I don't think it zooms very well. Shoot. All right, let's make it bigger so that everyone can see it, and then we'll shrink it down so you can see it, right? Okay, so now what happens if we want to get the top?
Just find the topmost.
Okay, top. All right, but what happened here? We get the same color.
No, the item on the top.
Ah, we have to do it to both, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense why? Because you have 3 layers, they're drawn all on top of each other. So you tear off the bottom, that exposes the second layer, but now you want to expose the first layer for the top part. So you have to tear off the top layer, 10 dp, and then you have to go to the second layer and then tear that one off as well, right? To get the bottommost layer. So let's make this 5 dp just so that we can, it looks okay. And then let's apply it to the button. Gradient. Let's run. It's kind of hard to see, but it worked, right? Purple and green. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to remove this, actually, just so it's clear. You guys see that? Okay, cool. So the other thing I want to focus on, though, is that this can actually take a complex something. It can actually take a stateless too. It doesn't have to just be a shape. I could change this to be a selector, right? Because let's say you want the top and bottom borders to be exactly the same, but now you want that middle color to change based off of if it's pressed or not. So I can take this, right, and say item and then I can say what if state pressed equals true, or okay, actually not state pressed if it's true. Let's just keep that the default. State pressed equals true. So give me another shape or another color.
B,
9B 2 6. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's run this. So does that make sense? What we're doing is we're taking like this basic shape, then we're composing like the state list. But now the state list can go into a layered list, and you can just continually compose things together. So it basically takes the state of your view, and you can like, for example, keep the borders exactly the same, but only change like certain areas based off of the state of the view. And so you can really, it's a very, very powerful functionality, right? You basically take your XML and compose all these different things together. Oh shoot. How do I zoom out? I don't know how to do this thing. Okay, cool. Right? That worked, right? Did everyone see that? Does that make sense? Any questions? But it's powerful, right? And so one of the things that you can do is you can actually do rotations too. So you can actually rotate a shape like by a certain degree, and like you can create triangles now because now you're clipping. So it's really powerful. You can create a circle, you can rotate that, an oval, rotate that a certain amount. So you can basically take this area and fill it up however you want, right, based off of these shapes. Construct more complex shapes out of these basic shapes. Cool? Does that make sense? Okay, any questions at this point? Question?
Now the step is how do we choose the right step? How do we choose the right step for
The view?
in the selector?
Right.
There is many steps, and how do we choose the right step to use?
Oh, sure. So what I should do is go over all the various states, right? Let's see if I have the slides here. You're talking about these states, right?
Yeah.
So for example, a checkbox has a check state. So basically, these are states that are sort of defined by Android, and depending on what you're using it for, right, the functionality or the specific component you're using for, you should select states appropriately. So a button will never have like a check state unless it's like, I guess an always depressed button, like one of those toggle buttons maybe. But in this case, like you won't have a check state. But you could potentially create your own custom like toggle button, right, where you have this check state, and you can set that state in your view. And what will happen is that the view will pick that state up and then apply your shape to it, right? So it's really based off of your functionality and what you want to communicate to the user. Does that make sense? That's cool. Yeah.
What difference between checkable and enable?
So checkable is basically like, so what you can do is basically saying, okay, this is a checkable component, right? It's like, does that make sense? It's almost like this has the functionality to be checked. So you can, for example, let's say you have a button that that might be configurable, so it's just a button, or it can be configurable, so it's toggleable, right? So it's checkable. So you could literally say, okay, is this you can create a compound state list that says, if it's checkable and checked, show this shape. But if it's not checkable, handle it differently. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? It's a little bit complicated, but basically you can use a checkable as like a condition for if it's like a toggleable button or a checkable button. We call that like a predicate. Predicate. Okay? Cool. Yeah.
Can we define animation when to press and press?
Yeah, sure. So animations we will get to next week. But yeah, like animations are obviously a lot more complicated. So what we're doing right today is like defining the basics of basically working with shapes. But we'll get there next week. But there is something actually called an animation list. So an animation list is actually basically you can rotate. It's almost like an animated GIF. So a GIF is just basically like a bunch of images like that is shown for a certain number of seconds. So actually I could basically do this. I could create a new drawable resource file, send animated lists, and then I basically say animated list, and then again you have your items, but now you have this thing called duration, right? So I can specify how long I want that to show. So if I want, for example, rainbow colored alternating things that flash, right, I basically create a bunch of items with a specific duration that have shape and a color, So actually, let's just take that rainbow state. Okay. Equation. And let's take another color, right? Let's take this color. I don't know, like 1 second, I think is how you do it. Actually, is it 1? Okay, well, actually, let's just try it. Let's basically put that into the button background. See if it works. Did it work? Did it work? Not doing something right with it, but okay. We'll skip this for now. Okay, guys, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will actually move into creating complex styles and then themes. Okay? All right, cool. Stop.
Duration is in milliseconds.
Milliseconds?
Yeah. So that's fast.
What? 10 milliseconds?
No, 1,000.
Oh, 1,000. Okay.
Too fast. Anyway, I could put it
Damn it.
How's the
Still not working. Huh.
Maybe try 5,000.
Did it work? Maybe I can't set it on the button. I don't know. Anyways, I haven't tried the animation list. I don't know how many people will use it. Like, but all right, cool. Let me stop this for now, and we can take a 5-minute break.